You're listening to Glove Up or Shut Up on the Angry Marks Podcast Network.
You're listening to Glove Up or Shut Up on AngryMarks.com with Peter H. and Stevie J. Find them on Twitter at HardcoreCDN and at AngryMarks. And now, for all news, reviews, and interviews in mixed martial arts, it's time for Glove Up or Shut Up from AngryMarks.com.
And welcome everybody to another episode of Glove Up or Shut Up right here on AngryMarks.com. My name is Peter H. I'm joined once again by my co-host from Omaha, Nebraska, Stevie J.
And we're joined by a very special guest tonight, the senior editor of Flow Combat and a good friend of mine from covering UFC since all the way at least back to Indianapolis. I think even further than that. Duane Finley is on the line.
What's up, gentlemen? It's a pleasure to be rocking and rolling with you on this fine evening.
It's a pleasure to have you. We've been trying to work this out for a while now, but you're such a busy man with Flow Combat, it's hard to nail you down to a place and a time.
You know, that's what they say, they keep Mr. Brony working. They're like, hey, you get on that hamster wheel, buddy. Nobody told you could get off. No, it's been cool, man. It's hard to believe that Flow Combat hasn't even been, tomorrow will be 2 months. You know, and tomorrow will be two months that we've been in, and it's crazy. It feels like 6 months.
Sure feels like a lot has happened in 6 months with what's going on in the world of MMA these days.
Oh, absolutely, man. Like this thing doesn't stop, and and we've always said that, but this is just crazier. This is the craziest year ever. I mean, if I would have told you guys a couple months ago that, hey, look, we're gonna have, Conor and Nate are gonna fight about this UFC thing, and it's gonna play out. But I'm like, yeah, top bit, I'll do you two better. You're gonna have Fedor and Brock back. I mean, you guys would have thought I was crazy. I would have thought I was crazy, but here we are.
And if you would have told me Michael Bisping will be the champion and Miesha Tate will be the women's bantamweight champion, I would have said, you're shitting me.
Absolutely. That's what I mean, man. Like, this is what I'm saying. Like, if somebody would have came up to me a year ago, I got one better for you. If they'd have said, hey, a year ago, like, hey, Duane, Bisping's got to be champion and you're going to be senior editor of the website, I've been like, you're out of your mind. You're out of your damn mind. And, but both are true, and here we are.
Yes, indeed. Well, let's get that story on how Flow Combat got started. Take everybody back to the launching of the website.
Oh, man. Well, I will tell you this, that, and I don't think it's kind of a secret at this point, but I initially turned the job down. Like, I was just like, man, I never had thought of myself in this role before. Because, I've always just been a kind of a lone wolf writer. Like, I kind of like that freedom. And, they came to me and I said, I turned it down, and they pursued me and said, "No, like, hey, look, you're the guy we want. You're the right guy." And I didn't even know if that was right. If I was the right guy, I wasn't sure. But I'm a gamer, and I'm willing to do anything, get best. So here we are, 2 months later, and it's kicking ass. The thing I think people have really embraced is this is a different than we have in that MMA space. It's not a news site. Yeah, there's some articles that are newsy, but that's just the stuff that everybody, that's just the huge stuff. But you're not going to see fight announcements. You're not going to see weigh-ins and stuff like that. Like that. And I know that's content that other sites have to service, and there's other good writers who have to do it. I'm not slighting that at all. I'm just saying, they gave me a chance to build something in my vision, and then my vision has always been about athletic, fighter-specific stuff. So that's what we're going to see. You guys are catching me on a pretty awesome day because tomorrow we have an in-depth project with Frankie Edgar that starts to roll out piece by piece by piece, and it's a written format, long form that I put together. And then there's also kind of a 30 for 30 documentary. I mean, it's amazing stuff. It's beautiful. Edgar gave us some great stuff, and that stuff kicks off tomorrow, so it's going to be great.
That's awesome. That's the kind of stuff that I've always known you for, more than just reporting on fights and covering fights, because like you said, that's what we all do. But the in-depth pieces that you've done over the years with guys like Brian Foster and Carlos Condit, where you really get, for lack of a better word, you get embedded with the fighters. Yeah, man, and and that's the funny thing is I'll know Carlos for the rest of my life, and I'll be a better man for it. But professionally, I think we'll always be linked together in some ways now. It was just one of those things that
it just happened the right way, and man, and that one kind of messed me up afterwards, because I was like, man, it's like you hit that 500-foot shot, and you're like, I don't know if I could ever go that, I don't know if I can hit that ball again, and everything would you either try and you go crazy chasing it, or you just kind of settle back and say, man, well, I sure hope something else comes along that I don't have to chase it. And then next thing you know, you're a senior editor, and you're like, yeah, okay, I don't have to chase it. But I will tell you this: if the listeners are, if you're fans of that Condit series, you're gonna love this Edgar thing. It's the same thing. It's the same tone. It's the same experience. I mean, it's the same. Because honestly, Steve, the reason I wanted to do the Edgar thing was the same reason I wanted to do the Condit thing, is because I see something in those men that I find fascinating. How can you be so decent and so gentle and such caring family men, and then when they step in that cage, something happens that I'm not saying, every fighter has that man to machine switch, but these guys have some type of resilience that just doesn't come stock ordered. You know what I mean? There's an animal in there. And with Condit, I got to see it. And with Edgar, I definitely saw it. So now you guys get to see it.
And that was why I was glad that you kind of put me on the path to getting to know Brian Foster a little better, because you had talked him up before he was even in World Series fighting. And once I got to have a couple of calls with him and get a little in depth with him, I saw kind of that same Carlos Condit thing that you're talking about. Like there's a lot more to this guy, what he went through with his family, with his brother dying, and the experiences that he's had, and having that UFC dream and then losing it and then having to find a new dream. I mean, that guy's story is so much more than just fighting.
Oh, absolutely. You're exactly right. And see, the thing with Brian, I always give him grief. I'm like, there's a certain breed of human being that is willing to stand at the tip of the barrel. And what I mean by that is that most people like to be at it, like they like to shoot from afar. And if it hits you, it hits you. There's some guys who will just stand at the tip of the barrel, your gun versus their gun, and point blank. One of us or both of us are hitting. You know what I mean? And there's that weird comfort zone. But yeah, see, and that's what I'm saying. Like Foster, I swear it to this day. And if you ask Brian Foster, he'll tell you. Say, next time you see him or talk to him, be like, hey, Brian, when was the moment that you knew Duane, you and Duane, was it like Duane was going to be able to tell your story? What was the moment between you two that you knew that, hey, this isn't another reporter, and it's just another fighter? And Steve, is because I was leaving the hit squad, and he's like, hey, man, he said, you ain't gotta go now. He's country as hell. He's like, you ain't gotta go now. He's like, let me buy you a cheeseburger. And I'm telling you, there's some expressions, like, we sat down and had a burger, man. Like, and we talked. And from there, all this great stuff, So it's the simplicity. I know so much gets put in this sport about reporting and, all the shit that just went on with Ariel. Sorry for cursing. All this, integrity, man. Integrity is pretty rare in the sport. I don't even know if journalism integrity exists in the world right now. We're living a different time. But I would tell you this, just being like, that's why I've always separated, man. I'm not a journalist, I'm a storyteller. You know what I mean? I worked for UFC.com for 5 years. I took a paycheck from Zuffa for 5 years, but I did the same thing as Zuffa as I did at Bleacher Report. That's why nobody's ever given me shit about it. But yeah, like, that's the truth. How can you say you're a journalist if you're taking money from promotion? I never spun stories for Zuffa. I just told the same straightforward things. But I never pretended that I didn't know the animal I was dancing with. So, but it's hard. Man, that's why that's why I think Zuffa, I'm not saying I was a compromised case. I'm just saying I think a lot of people get compromised because it's hard to make money in what we do.
Well, and of course, Ariel brought this up himself. Since you touched on his name, I'll go ahead and say what he said when he made his statement on the MMA Hour. He knew that the value of anything over $30 was going to be in some way a compromise to his ethics. And we can all live that anytime we go to a show and they offer us a press credential and give us a meal, because that's automatically more than $30, because a fan has to pay $500 for a ticket and they don't get a free meal.
Yeah, and let's be honest, and I know you know about this, Steve. Let's be honest, our outlets that we're working for aren't paying. We get Red Roof in rates. You know what I mean? Like yeah. So if we get a catered meal, we all look like cheetahs sitting in the brush, like on the Serengeti, like. But that's what I'm saying is like. I don't know. And Ariel did what he did to further his career, wanted to be on TV that bad, but here's the thing. You can check I'll go over Uriah Faber. Check the record, bud. But yeah, like, why I work for UFC.com, I never jumped out. And I'm not a critical guy on Twitter anyway. But if something like pissed me off, I would. If I saw like Vitor Belfort fail his third test, I'd be like, what the hell? I never stopped being who I was, but I also knew there was like, hey, you work for UFC, then you're not going to win any awards. You're not going to win, I knew I was taking that dive, and so be it.
But at least now with Flow Combat and the stuff that you do, you're getting to call your own shots, and you don't have to worry about having somebody over your head. Now you got the free reign to never have to even think about that.
Oh yeah, man, I'm winning all the awards this year. No, I'll tell you this, and the guy I work for, my good buddy Jeremy Botter, I don't know if you heard his submission radio interview, but yeah, he went all the way off the res last week or the week before after the 199 thing. But no, that's what's great. Like, nothing against UFC, because it's the biggest promotion in the sport. I think a lot of good goes there. They definitely have a lot of talent. But it does feel nice to not have like a media partnership with them, does it? We're not beholden at Flow. Hell, we promote our own shows, like Valor fights and NEF fights this weekend. Like, we have our own shit to worry about. And, and here's the thing, it's a delight to actually cover Bellator for once. So, times there are changing, as Free Will and Bob Dylan said.
Well, you mentioned Bellator, and one of the biggest stories in the last 2 weeks has been the passing of Kimbo Slice. And he's one of those guys that I think when you describe as somebody living on the tip of the barrel, Kimbo was always that guy. He put himself all in every time.
Yeah, Kimbo, I don't think we'll ever see a Kimbo again. You know what I mean? That's just, I think not to make fun of Joe Rogan and say, oh, once in human history, but it is, Kimbo is that guy that you're not going to be able to duplicate, because he not like hyperbole aside, but man, the guy is a phenom. You know what I mean? It's a phenomenon. It just, you won't see it, man. He's the epitome of what fight promotion's all about, but he wasn't that talented. You know what I mean? Like, late start in his career, came to us in an unusual way, and I love him for it, man. Like, that was fantastic. But it's sad. Rest in peace, Big Ferg. We lost something special. And I'm not saying like Anderson Silva the greatest fighter in the world. I'm saying something special to watch because we all watched. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, we did more than watch. I mean, as I told somebody last week, I came all the way to St. Louis just because of the idea of Ken Shamrock and Kimbo Slice. Like, I took that drive, I drove all the way there and all the way back. When a fight interests me like that, I'll make that trip if I think it's gonna be something unique or special or memorable. Just like I had to drive all the way to Indianapolis to be there live for Carlos Condit in the main event against Mark Campman. It was like, I knew it was gonna be something special. I didn't know what it was gonna be, but I knew I had to be there.
Yeah, and we saw something special. We saw textbook MBK, and that was a great fight. And, that's what I mean. That's the thing that we love about combat sports. That's the thing that we sign up. That's the thing that got us to enjoy it in the first place. So that's the good stuff. But Steve, and covering this sport, there's plenty of bad stuff too. Plenty of stuff we look and say, man, I don't want to see that guy fight anymore, or I don't want to do this, I don't want to do that, or man, I don't think this doesn't make me feel right. It's a weird thing we go through.
I had that just a few weeks ago in the main event, Melvin Manouf and Rafael Cavallo. After that fight was over, I thought, oh my God, I don't want to cover this for at least a week. I don't want to see either of these guys for a month or more. I was just so disgusted. And even Jimmy Smith on commentary was like, I have words to say that I can't say on the air right now. And I tweeted him saying that, and I got retweeted like 100 times that night. And I thought, oh, Bellator is going to crap their pants now. I'm never going to get another Bellator interview ever again. But this week, the interviews are rolling in. I've got 2 tomorrow and 1 on Thursday. So I guess they're not holding it against me that I tweeted Jimmy Smith saying that. But I totally agreed with his sentiments in that moment.
Oh, absolutely. But here's the thing. Like, we're going to be, I've said this time and time again, we're going to be able to look back in 10, 15 years from now, and we're going to be able to point to one specific date, one specific occurrence that changed everything. And that's the Reebok deal. That's the Reebok deal. Before the Reebok deal, the UFC had everything that they needed. They had the game locked down. They had convinced and fought to prove that they weren't a monopoly. Everything was great. No fighter wanted to be anywhere else but the UFC. And then things got greedy. And they started putting caps on what fighters can make, and they started messing with the money. And then people went to free agency. We haven't seen the tip, even the tip of that iceberg yet.
Oh, we're about to see it with Rory MacDonald. This could be his last UFC fight, and that makes it a very interesting situation for Peter to be covering that fight in Ottawa this weekend.
Absolutely. Absolutely. That, to lose a guy like Rory Mac would be, that would be a game changer. And Peter, are you getting any of that vibe up there?
There's a definite vibe going on in the city. It's just, the vibe I think is more the first time the promotion is here. So the hardcores are excited that I know, and the casuals who are going because, hey, they're here, let's check it out. They're not sure what they're expecting. And I have to tell them, look, you might get a great show. You might get the show like they had in, was it Winnipeg or Calgary, Stevie?
Calgary.
Where it was a complete snore fest for like 8 straight fights, and it's like, oh, they killed the town in one show. It was Calgary. It was, don't get your expectations too high with that main event. You got Donald Cerrone as well on the card, and you got the first 125 women's fight. I mean, it could be a great night. Yeah,
or like you said, it could be a not so hot night. But I really think, I'm looking at a few different things here, boys. A lot of people are thinking, Cerrone's the name. Cote is a much bigger man. Cote has a iron chin. And Cote, as we ran on Flow, he specifically pinpointed in the talk that he knows that pressure kills Cowboy. Pressure of the moment and pressure physically. He's like, when you put him on his heels, he's defenseless. And I'm like, man, that seems like a guy who's got something figured out. So, I really think the more interesting fight, though, is Wonderboy Thompson. Because, man, Thompson is, who's done that to Johnny Hendricks before? Nobody. And I had a great talk with Steven a couple of days ago. And, we talked about distance. All that space between fighters, man. Most fighters treat that with uncertainty. That's the void. Have to close that distance. Have to close that gap. Wonderboy, he feels like he owns that space. And he operates like he owns it. And so he knows that distance is mine to close whenever I want. When I stay at the range I need to be, they cannot hit me. He feels invincible there. Rory, but Rory is the worst stylistic matchup for him. But what Rory are we going to see, boys? The last time we saw Rory, he couldn't sit up on his own after Robbie Lawler. Has anything changed? That's why we love this thing, right?
Yes, indeed. And I guess on that note, let's go ahead and make our predictions then. Let's run down this UFC Ottawa card and figure out who
I said it last week.
Peter's on satellite.
I was going to say, this
from
fight,
Saskatoon.
Yeah.
I think we're going to get the Rory MacDonald.
Go ahead. There's like a 10-second delay, Peter, so just go ahead.
I've driven through Saskatoon. It's not pretty. I think when it comes to this fight with Rory, I hope we get as I said last week, the fight against Condon is the one I'm looking, is the Rory I think we're going to see in Ottawa.
Yeah, and that's possible, but my gut just says Rory, but I'm gonna go ahead and go wild card here, man. Let's go Wonder Boy for the win. I don't know how, but I'm gonna say Wonder Boy.
I like Wonder Boy a lot, and I think, as you already alluded to, Duane, he's done things that nobody else has done to the same fighters in the division that you just never thought you would see somebody like Johnny Hendricks just get completely dissected the way he did. And I think he's capable of doing the same thing to Rory. But, man, after that Rory Lawler fight, and thinking to myself, 5 more minutes he would have been the champion, I just don't see him falling short in anything less than a title fight. I kind of think MacDonald, even though his personality is not as large as we'd like it to be from our star fighters, it comes through in the way he fights. His never say die attitude, the fact he'll come from behind in almost any fight if he's behind and find a way to overcome that. He's got the heart of a fighter, even if he doesn't talk it all the time.
Oh yeah, and that's the thing with his personality, or some would consider a lack thereof. It's like, hey, look, there's some fighters that step up and have the charisma. There's some fighters who just don't want that side of it. But see, that's what I mean. Like Rory talking about free agency, man. Like, you know, to have that side of it, to have the big money, you have to have that promotion side too. So I think he's working on it. You know, I just think he's kind of socially awkward. I don't think he much probably cares for folks. You know, he has his own little circle. But man, I mean, if you know, it comes with the job. As Faber used to say, it comes with the territory, and you got to do it.
All right, well, co-main event. Let's talk about that one as well. Peter, since you're on a little bit of a delay, I'm going to let you give your prediction first. Donald Cerrone, Patrick Cote. Don't just be the homer in Ottawa and say the Canadian's going to win. What do you really think?
See, my heart is leaning towards Cote, but I actually am going to pick Cerrone, and I'm going to say Cerrone stops him in the second round.
I'd like to agree, but I really think the size difference is going to be hard for Cerrone to handle. I think he had sort of a natural advantage being the 6 foot big guy at lightweight that was just too much to handle for almost everybody except Rafael dos Anjos. And I don't think he's got that same advantage going up into the higher weight classes. So I'm actually going to pick the Predator.
Yeah, I like I said, all the things I mentioned earlier about Cote that I think are going to be huge problems. I've never ever picked against Cerrone. I just don't think you can. And why I think it's possible that Cote gets the win, but you know, I got to go with Cerrone here.
I don't like going against Cerrone. I've never really been one to do that either. I just feel like Cote is on that last big run of his career, and I feel like it's going to take him either all the way to the top, or if he loses to Cerrone, that might be the end of it. But right now, he's on that run, and I think it's not over for him yet. So, third from the top, very interesting fight. A guy that I probably shouldn't have dismissed as easily as I did in Steve Boss, who really showed me something in the James Tahuna fight that now makes me reconsider my opinion about him. And then the OC, Sean O'Connell, we're going to see what the real OC can do in this fight. Duane, what do you think?
You know, they've both been a surprise, but the real OC's been the big grabber, and he's a hell of a writer too. So I got to go with my brother behind the pen, and go with Sean.
All right, Peter, what about you? Are you picking Boss, or are you picking Sean O'Connell, the real OC?
See, in this fight, I'm leaning more towards the Canadian here, Boss, because the hometown, or basically any Canadian on this card, it's so close to TriStar. It's only a couple hours away. They're going to have the extra pop in their step. I think Boss wins, but it's going to be razor thin. I hate saying decision, but I think it goes all 3 rounds.
I am leaning towards a decision myself. I'm going to, just on the flip of the coin here, I'm going to say O'Connell. I feel like Boss still has something to prove, and if he wins this fight too, then he's definitely proven his point. But I am taking him seriously now, so I give him that much. Before he got that first big win in UFC, I thought, this is just a hockey guy trying to get into MMA too little too late, and boy, does he prove me wrong. It's kind of like when Brock Lesnar jumped in from pro wrestling into fighting. It's like, everybody thought, it's a little late for him to start, and then he proved to be a wonderkind at it, so you know, sometimes these things work out for guys later in life. But let's go to Olivier Aubin-Mercier, I love saying that name, versus Thibaut Gauthier. And Duane, who do you have in this?
I'm going to go with Aubin. I'm not even going to try to get into the name, because I always mess it up. I just think it's a grittier style. You know, I think it's a grittier style, man. You know, and you know, home turfing it. Let's go with that.
I just think every time I watch Aubin-Mercier fight, and this goes all the way back to the Ultimate Fighter season that he was on, I look at him like he doesn't know how good he can be yet. Something in just watching the way he fights, I actually thought that losing to Carlos Diego Ferreira was probably better for him because he needed that to like bring his game up to the next level. Like, he saw that and went, okay, now it's time for me to stop cruising. I've really got to put forth the effort, because before it just seemed to come naturally and easy to him. But shit gets hard after a while, and that was the time for him to refocus and become an even better fighter. Peter, what do you think?
With Obiang Mercier, you're right, Duane. He is gritty. I would even call him a grinder, but an exciting grinder, unlike the freaking grinding of Ben Askren. But that's a different story for a different day. I got Obiang Mercier winning this in the second round. Stoppage.
Yeah, Duane, you gotta know right here, right now, from what Peter just said, that picking on Ben Askren is one of his favorite things to do on this show. He cannot.
Hey, you can't be talking about my man Funk like that, bro. Like, Funky's my boy, and he's my boy because you know what my whole thing with Askren is. Yeah, maybe he's boring to watch, but stop it. It's your job. It's your job to get in and stop what he does. You know, I like technicians, and yeah, but yeah, I see your point.
No, thank you, because I've been saying the same thing to him forever and ever, because I was at one of his Bellator title defenses, and I watched him dissect a man for 4 straight rounds, and the crowd was booing it, and I was laughing on the inside. You can't show it on press row, but I was enjoying the hell out of it. Like, I'm thinking to myself, these people are all booing. It's too bad for them that this guy can't do anything to stop what Askren's doing. You know, if they don't like it, then his opponent should do something about it, and he can't.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. It's your job to stop it.
And this fight's going to be Quebec versus France, which I find hilarious.
What was that, Peter? That seemed to have nothing to do with us talking about Ben Askren. I think we got him in a time delay again. Are you on the other end of the time machine? I was going to say,
the Obiang Mercier fight, it's basically... Yeah, I'm here. I just, Obiang Mercier fight, it's Quebec versus France. Finally, the battle will be in the octagon.
Okay, I guess that's your way of segueing us off Ben Askren. That's fine. Okay, we'll move on from him to, Valerie Letourneau and Joanne Calderwood. Who do you like in this one, Peter?
Man, this is gonna be a tough one. As I said before, it's a debut, women's flyweight fight, 125, and I don't know. I'm gonna go with Calderwood by decision.
I feel like Calderwood is coming into her own of late. I think on that season of Ultimate Fighter, she was a little unsure of her place in the organization, and she had been largely known before that as an Invicta fighter and thought of very highly in that, but hadn't fought the top names in that. You know, she fought guys like Katya Kankapa and Nuema Rueda Center, you know, not the biggest names in Invicta, but she was definitely working her way up at the time. And then in UFC, she kind of had to start over from scratch. But with her last 3 fights, you know, 2 decisions and losing 1 by armbar, but she's had tough, gritty fights. I know we're using the word gritty a lot, but when I think of Calderwood, that's exactly what comes to mind. And Duane, what do you think?
I'm going with Valerie Letourneau. I think because JoJo has shown us inconsistencies. I really do. I think JoJo looked great in her last fight, but that was because she dictated and she was able to bully the situation. Valerie's not that fighter. She's gonna be in her face, and JoJo hasn't proven to me that she can be consistent. While Valerie's proven to me that she has tough as nails. Let's go with Val.
You're kind of pulling me in that direction as I look at their fight records because, yeah, other than Joanna Champion, Letourneau was pretty much having her way with most of her opponents, but then nobody really has their way with Joanna Champion, which is why we're all looking forward to that rematch with Claudia Gadelha. It's like, what are they going to do when they meet again? Is it going to be close? Is Joanna going to really get the better of her in a convincing, dramatic way this time? Or are we going to see Gadelha rise to the top? It's fascinating, but here we have kind of the break point between the two of them in this fight. Even though it's a flyweight fight, it's kind of interesting thinking about what it implies for other fighters in the strawweight division.
I'm back.
Oh, Duane, you're back. Hooray.
This is the craziest thing.
Yeah, and I think we got Peter out of the time warp too. I think he's back to real time now.
Peter's back from Mars.
Yes.
I love how he just randomly jumped in and goes, "This is Quebec. This is like French versus the Canadian. Like, just completely, when we were talking about Askren, it was the most random, hilarious thing.
Yeah, I don't even know that I'm going to edit that out. I'll just leave that in as is.
like we were talking, he decided nowhere. He goes, "I like ice cream."
Well, Peter, was there anything on the prelims of this card that you wanted to get into real quick?
I think the one fight I'm looking forward to the most on here has to be the Sam Alvey fight against Elias Tiradu.
Oh, yeah, Smiling Sam Alvey. I don't know which site I saw it on. Might have been Flow Combat, might have been somewhere else, but I saw some really interesting story about Sam and how everybody thinks the smiling is a gimmick. And having seen that guy fight, it's not. The guy literally cannot help himself.
Yeah, no, yeah, it was on Flow Combat, and he said some interesting things, man. Like, Sam is, I don't know, Sam kind of had personally, Sam's kind of had the Dodson effect for me. You know, like, you're just kind of like, man, guys, like, you either love him or you think he's annoying as hell. You know, but Sam pointed out, like, you know, I'm coming after the tough winners. That's what he wants. He's like, I'm coming after them. He's like, because he beat, fighting Theodoro, and then he wants to fight. He said he wants to coach tough against Whitaker. So, and and Robert Whitaker got, you've seen, his hands, man. That kid's the truth. So, I think Sam's biting off more than you can chew. But hey, that's what this game's about.
Yes, indeed, should be a very fun fight, and I don't even know who to pick in this one just yet. Who do you pick, Peter?
Well, I'm gonna go with Tiradu, but I saw him on the Canadian version of The Amazing Race, and his girlfriend, partner, whatever. It's gonna be funny because she's pretty smoking hot. So is Sammy's wife. So it's like the battle of the hot wives, I guess. I don't know, but I'm gonna go with Alvey.
Yeah, let's put the two of them in an octagon and let them mix it up.
You guys are gonna get me fired. Is that how you say? How did you pronounce his name?
Elias Tiradu.
Oh, I thought it was Theodoro.
Yeah, so did I. Peter and I have this ongoing battle with how he pronounces things, and what really boggles my mind is when he tries to say a Russian fighter's name, and I'm like, how many Russians are there in hockey in Canada? You can't say a Russian's name.
Some are easier than others.
Yeah, I'm gonna stick with Theodoro on this one, just for, nothing against you, Peter, but I already, your comment on Askren already showed me that maybe you should have stayed on Mars for this broadcast. I'm just kidding. No, of course, I respect my brethren to the north. But no, I think this is absolutely, Elias's fight. I think it's gonna be a rough go for him at the jump because Sam throws, heavy leather at first. But I think Theodoro's, Elias's ability to push the pace is going to wear Sam down. And Sam struggled with that in the past. Fights have gone, any kind of distance. So, I see Elias, especially Elias coming off that loss to Santos like that. I think we see a different kind of motivation from him.
I think so too, and I think he's another guy like Aubin Mercier that a loss was better for him than a win because now he'll take it to the next level coming off of that loss. So I'm really looking forward to his performance in this prelim fight, and I'm looking forward to this card on the whole. I think some people after UFC 199 and before UFC 200, they might be glossing over this one a little bit, but I think this is a quality card from top to bottom.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah, I do too, man. I think, it's just, it sucks when cards are judged by, and as we've learned, gentlemen, in the past, it's the cards that don't always have the most name value that really just leave us like, oh shit, that was an awesome night of fights. But what do? You're between 199 and 200. You're between, now the Bellator card coming up has got more names. So I don't know, but I think there's quality for it. I just feel bad for, for Peter, you and your countrymen, just don't get the love, man. Like, I don't know. Yeah. I think Canada needs the love, and, I think it's overdue. So hopefully, we'll see more of it. We'll see bigger shows.
I know he was feeling the love just for the fact that they came to Ottawa, because he'd been petitioning for this for years. Like, come on, you've had shows in every other major Canadian city, and you haven't had one in Ottawa. You're like, the only place left that you haven't gone is Ottawa. So I think he would have gone nuts if they had picked Winnipeg for this card.
As I said before, Ottawa is now the 6th NHL city to host a UFC show. The only Canadian NHL city not to host a UFC event is Edmonton.
I'm sure that'll happen eventually. The time will come. So we'll wait.
Yeah, they went to Saskatoon. All right, let's not forget.
I haven't forgotten.
That is so true. But you did mention Bellator, Duane, and I just want to throw this one out real quick for the sake of discussion. I got an update today with Bellator kickboxing fights that are going to go on after Dynamite 2 in St. Louis, and I added up the list of fights from top to bottom that were currently booked for the card. Now, some of these guys may fall out due to injury or missing weigh-in or whatever, but 23 fights I counted between Bellator kickboxing and Dynamite 2. Is that just too freaking much for fight fans in one night? Duane, what do you say?
Is it too freaking much for reporters? That's murder, man. That is murder. Yeah, it's way too much. And, yeah, but, you know, they're going for spectacle. I get it.
I do too.
So,
I'm kind of glad I didn't credential to go to that one, because that would be the longest day of my life. I'd probably be there at 3 in the afternoon and I wouldn't get home till 3 in the morning.
Yeah, I'll remember that when I'm sitting there cursing your name.
Fair enough, but I'm still going to be working. Just because I'm not there in person doesn't mean that I'm not covering every single fight here on a computer in my basement. So I'm working no matter what.
I remember that. You remember that? I'll send you nasty tweets.
You're welcome to do it. I'm feeling a little overwhelmed in general, and not just with Dynamite 2, but the fact that head-to-head on Friday this week, World Series of Fighting 31 and Bellator 156 at the same time. It's this overkill subject that we keep talking about as reporters, as writers, as fans. It's just, there's so much out there, and it's not even UFC that's overflooding the marketplace. It's everything.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. And then people are like, whenever they have an event, and whenever there's an event that lines up, and they're like, well, the UFC has an event every weekend, so yeah, every weekend you'd have an event. You're going against UFC, blah, blah, blah. You know what I mean? Like, it doesn't matter what it is, you know, it just have to, but yeah, we are in a time of oversaturation, my friend, and it won't stop, because, I mean, I can tell you, it is not going to slow down, it's not going to stop anytime soon.
I guess the only upside to it is it keeps us all gainfully employed, because there's always somebody that needs a reporter to cover one of these things. So it's good news for us, but I can understand how the casual fight fan is looking at this like the same way they're looking at WWE right now when it comes to, could I watch the NBA Finals or could I watch Raw? Well, I've already had all the WWE I could take, so I'm going to watch the NBA Finals instead. And Raw got creamed this week.
Yeah. I mean, it's a good time to be a sports fan. That's for sure.
And everybody seems to want, it's the TV market right now that everybody wants a live sports. They want live action. They want live something. It's that they think that's the only way to keep eyeballs. I feel like the whole TV industry is in this panic now that they're losing viewers to people who are cutting the cord and going to Netflix and HBO Go and all these streaming services. They feel like the only way they can hang on to the people they've still got is live sports.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's the thing, right? And then they look at Nielsen tracks Twitter or whatnot now, you know, and it's like, oh, this is the biggest social media thing in there. Everybody's got their hashtags and shit. Yeah, it's not gonna change.
No, it's definitely not. Peter,
and Steve, real quick, you could edit this out, but man, my phone's gonna die, brother.
Oh, no problem. Well, let's get some quick plugs in before you go. Tell everybody where they can follow you and what's coming up.
I have, like we said earlier, I have the Frankie Edgar project coming out tomorrow on Flow Combat. Definitely check that out. At Twitter, at Duane Finley MMA. I want to thank you guys big time for having me on. Sorry I rushed out with my janky-ass phone in Texas. It sucks in Texas, so, Texas is killing me. But yeah, I gotta go, but I'll be on soon.
All right. Thanks, Duane. I'm glad I finally caught up with you, and we'll do it again real soon. Take care. Have a great night.
Thank you, Steve. Thank you, Peter.
All right.
Thanks, man.
And that was Duane Finley right here on Glove Up or Shut Up. You can check him out on Twitter at Duane Finley MMA, but more importantly, go to flowcombat.com. You can see that Frankie Edgar series that starts this week, runs all week long, and all the other things they do at Flow Combat, part of the Flow Sports Network. It's a great site. He's a great guy. I've known him for years, and we're so glad that he was on the show tonight.
He reminds me of, you're gonna laugh, but he reminds me of our very first, another co-host of this show.
Oh yeah? Who are you referring to?
From the early days of Glove or Shut Up.
Oh, yeah, well, I guess you could say there's some similarities there, being the same region of the country, relatively speaking.
All right, well, we got lots of news to get to, Stevie. First, let's talk about,
First, let's talk about,
easy way to say this, but Kimbo Slice, no, let's talk about Kimbo Slice. They're having a tribute special on Spike TV. The show will lead into Bellator 157 next week.
Yeah, that's to be expected, really. I don't know that I can add or subtract to that other than to say he was one of their biggest draws, and as we already said, he was a guy that intrigued fight fans, whether you thought he was a great fighter or a not great fighter, you were intrigued by Kimbo, and they have to pay tribute to that and the fact that he had such a loyal following and he was such a big part of Bellator, even if only for a very short time.
It's going to be a 1 hour special, and the latest reports that I've seen is he was diagnosed with a mass on his liver and congenital heart failure.
Yeah, that's pretty much the same thing I've been reporting all the last 2 weeks ever since this story first broke, was that he had heart failure as early as the Friday before he died. He was waiting for a heart transplant. They were actually getting ready to move him to Cleveland so he could be put on the waiting list for a donor heart, and he didn't even make it that long. They couldn't even get him out of the hospital and get him to Cleveland in time because things just went downhill that quickly. It's really sad, but I guess, yeah, that's just the way it went. Sometimes there's nothing you can do in those situations.
It's true. You don't know when your number's up, and unfortunately, like, when we all got the message, like, you know, the team is rushing to the hospital, he's in dire straits, and it's like, oh boy, like, it just was crazy how it went from dire straits to, you know, he passed away, and...
Yeah, it was personally insane for me because you were messaging me, other people were messaging me, American Top Team was tweeting things, and my bosses at MMA Mania were urging me to write the story, write it up, we need it to go, and I'm trying to deliver it, and I keep emailing them back. I'm like, American Top Team just tweeted he's dead. Do you really want me to go with the story the way it is now, or should I change it? They're like, just put it up, we'll add another story later. I'm like, okay, fine, I'm trying to be accurate here because this story kept changing every minute.
And the reason I'm having trouble trying to put words together right now is, you know, this is one of 3 sad stories on my list. I want to get through them. Kimbo Slice, hour-long special. Everybody check that out. Luke Rockhold this week lost his father.
Yeah, that.
So it goes from, that's tough.
Yeah, that's just brutal timing for him with, the way things went with Bisping and then to lose his dad right after that. That really hurts. I feel for the guy and I feel for his whole family too. This'll be a month he wants to forget.
And there's one, in sports, like, it seems like we've lost a lot of people over the last little while. I mean, it just seems like with Muhammad Ali, Kimbo, Gordie Howe.
Oh, yeah,
you know,
dude. Yeah, I want to take a moment for Gordie Howe because that news hit me like a ton of fucking bricks. You know what he meant to hockey in general in Canada, but as a Red Wings fan, you know what he meant to me personally.
Yeah. Yeah, they're going to be airing the funeral service live here in Canada, so it tells you how big it is.
Mm-hmm. I mean, honestly, I don't think the Red Wings as a franchise would be the franchise that I love and talk about and has so much adoration. You know, even not to you, I know, as a Maple Leafs fan, and to a lot of other hockey fans, they just cannot stand the Red Wings, but you know how they used to call Yankee Stadium the house that Ruth built? I would call the Detroit Red Wings the house that Howe built.
Stevie, let me ask you a question. if the UFC goes into Detroit, there's talk right now, the new arena for the Red Wings is going to be Little Caesars Arena. There's talk it might be renamed the Gordie Howe Arena. How excited would you be covering UFC or even going to a hockey game at Gordie Howe Arena?
Dude, that would mean the world to me. If that happened, I will be beyond overjoyed. I don't know if I'd be in tears, but I might be close. That would be pretty special.
Yeah. One last note here, and we'll get to some positive news here in a second, but, another name that is no longer with us, and it's someone you might not know if you're not a hardcore, but former UFC and Strikeforce cutman Huichi Mata passed away on June the 1st.
No, that's a name I've definitely heard, read, seen, probably been by him at several UFCs when he's been a cutman. So Stitch was the guy that everybody identified with because he's such a personality, but yeah, that's another unfortunate piece of news.
All right, let's go on to something else, and let's move on to Conor McGregor, who's on my news this week, with him being the first MMA fighter to be in the Forbes Top 100 highest paid athletes.
Yeah, well, with the big fights that he's had and the big money that he's been able to command for being in those fights, it really shouldn't come as a surprise.
No. It's just, his rematch against Diaz, I'll believe it closer to the fight. Something tells me this fight is going to get postponed. I don't know why. I just have that feeling in the back of my neck.
Yeah, but that would really shoot them in the foot at the worst time because they got such a big roll coming up here between 200, 201, and 202. And if 201 is considered by fans to be the weaker card, that's their fault because it's going to be a hell of a card. But quite frankly, they couldn't afford to lose the main event of 202 if that happens. That would be a disaster. Peter?
Now, let's move on to, have you heard the latest Miesha Tate Ronda Rousey news?
I've heard a lot of things said by both sides, but be more specific.
There's reports that Rousey is telling people that I'll come back for one fight against Miesha Tate because I know that I can beat her and then I'm retiring.
I have heard similar things to that, and given the track record between the two, you could understand where she's coming from, that she feels like Miesha Tate is an easy out, but I don't know. I think that now that Miesha has that I think now that Miesha has that title, she's not an easy out for anybody, including Rousey. I think she will defend it with her life if they get that fight and she's still the champion.
Well, Tate's responded and said on Fight Pass that she doesn't want to fight Holly Holm. I don't know if it's true or not, but I have heard that. If it's true, I find it disrespectful.
It is, in a way, disrespectful to Holly Holm, considering the way that Holm just absolutely tooled Rousey on her way to taking the title from her. So, if you're looking for contenders to fight the champion, why wouldn't you have Rousey prove it by going back in there and beating the woman that beat her? That would set her up to get a title shot, as opposed to her just walking in. I almost said cakewalking in because I would apply Cupcake and Miesha Tate's nickname, but I tried to go a different route there.
Now, I'm going to tell you some news here. It's about this week's show here in Ottawa, and I want your opinion on this. They're going to be doing the mandatory weigh-ins earlier. They're going to give them a 3-hour window. They're going to step on the scale between 9 a.m. and noon on Friday at a hotel near the arena. So, are you in favor of the earlier weigh-ins as far as a 3-hour window to get to your supposed weight?
Seems like every fighter I talked to lately for an interview has an opinion on this, and by and large, it's mostly the same opinion. They like the early day weigh-in because not only do you get rehydrated before you actually make the public weigh-in and step on the scale, it's a situation where you can be more charismatic and personable at the media event, which, let's face it, a public weigh-in is basically for the media to get interviews, get quips, get a good shot of the fighters posing and jaw-jacking with each other, sometimes even getting a little physical with each other. So, I think it works better for the fighters, although I understand why it raises concern that fighters could be way heavier if they have a few extra hours time and they get to rehydrate even earlier than they used to. But I'm in favor of it. I think if it makes it easier for fighters to get on the scale and be more personable, as long as they had to meet the weight at some point and it was recorded and made official, then I'm still okay with that.
There was one rule they put in place saying a fighter has to be 8% within the weight on fight week. And one UFC champion right now is saying, no.
Who's saying that?
And it's surprising who it is.
Yeah, tell me.
Demetrius Johnson.
I guess I wouldn't have thought making weight was a problem for him, but maybe he gets really bulked up to make his cut to flyweight. I don't know. Let's
see this. What I'm reading here is, I never missed weight, not once. I've never had a scare, so I will come in weighing. I've never had a scare, so I will come in weighing 138, 139. What are they going? Oh, I love this. Is why I circled it. What are they going to do? Not let me fight? I'm not a crack addict. It's not like I need to go to rehab for making weight.
Oh, wow. That's some pretty strong words.
He goes on and on, but that's the gist of it.
Well,
all right, one last news item here, and then I'll give the floor to you, and that is Mitch Gagnon's coming back, finally back from his knee injury.
All right, well that's good. I want to hear that any fighter's coming back, and hopefully is going to be a shade of their old self, 100% and ready to go.
He's a tough SOB, I tell you what. All right, well, what's on tap for Thursday night AMP?
Gonna preview two big cards this weekend. We've got WWE Money in the Bank, and that's going to take place in Las Vegas. And then we've got New Japan's Dominion card on June 19th at the Osaka-jo Hall. So plenty to talk about, but I'm more interested in your schedule than my schedule, Peter. What are you doing for the next 3 days and change? Where are you going to be? What are you doing?
Oh, I don't know. There's some fight going on here in Ottawa. I've got to go the weigh-ins, which are now ceremony, basically. Friday afternoon, late Friday afternoon, and I'm trying to meet up with a friend of the site here. I'm not going to say who until I see him in person, but hopefully I'll talk to him on Friday night over a couple of brews, and then Saturday, it's going to be a long day with the doors opening at 5:30 in the afternoon, and I believe I'll be there until post-fight presser starts at 1 in the morning, so I'll be lucky if I get home around 2:30 or 3.
Probably so, but that's usually the way it goes when you cover these things. But I figured they would have like a pre-fight press conference or a media event at one of the local gyms. Are they not doing that?
There is some media appearances, but there's either very early in the morning or I just can't. I can't make the event for logistical reasons. But there is some other stuff going on. I'll see if I can go to them over the next couple of days, and I'll let you know.
Yeah, by all means keep us updated, but of course, you're doing all of this for Wrestling Observer, so we want everybody to go to WrestlingObserver.com to check out whatever Peter has for them in the next few days for the UFC show in Ottawa. That's who he's working for, that's who the credentials with, and all that coverage is going to be there and not on AngryMarks.com, which I won't be mad about because I know I've done the exact same thing. I've covered stuff for Wrestling Observer and it's been exclusive to them as well when I've been at UFC shows, so I know how the game is played.
I might have a story or two for the air next week on Glow Up or Shut Up, so how about that?
I will look forward to those stories because, as Duane and I already talked about earlier in the show, it is always an experience when you're there. You know, it's a door that swings both ways. If you're on the outs with UFC and they send you outside to the parking lot and make you take all your shit and leave, you can feel like the lowest thing on earth. And thankfully that's never happened to me. But when you're on the other side and the press people come up and welcome you and the PR people come up and shake your hand and you get a nice meal, it's hard to not feel a little, I wouldn't even say like you're favorable towards UFC when that happens, but it just makes you feel good as a reporter. Like, yeah, this is what I paid dues for. I'm glad to be here right now because this feels right. And that's what I'm looking forward to that for you because I know how good it feels when that happens.
And you know I've paid my dues.
You certainly have, Peter. So on that note, why don't you kick it to our closing statement?
All right. Well, for Stevie J and for our guest, my name is Peter H., the Hardcore Canadian. Thanks for listening. As I always say, never leave it to the judges. Good night, everybody.
See ya.
Who wants a KO for Christmas?
Remember to follow us on Twitter at HardcoreCDN and at AngryMarks, and our guest Duane Finley at Duane Finley MMA.
You're listening to the Angry Marks Podcast Network.